Welcome back, everybody. Today, I want to talk about circles in perspective. Circles and cylinders, and it'll pertain to all that. But let's talk about circles. So here's our circle, okay? And I want to take a note about it that's going to help us out here. So check out this way the circle fits in the square. Okay, so this is obvious. I'm sure you already know this, and if you think about it for 2 seconds, right, that the circle only touches a square in the top and the bottom, and the left and the right, and it fits perfectly within that square. Now that's going to help us when we're trying to draw a circle in perspective. Okay, another thing about this that I want us to take note of is that you can get the middle of the circle, obviously, when you extend those lines from where the circle touches a square, top and bottom, left and right, and we can get the midpoint. But there's another way to get the midpoint of a square in particular, okay? That's if you draw a diagonal line from the top left to the bottom right and vice versa, we can also get the midpoint of a square, but would also give us the midpoint of a circle within that square. Okay, now this is going to help us a ton. And this is what I call the X rule. The rule of X as pertains to perspective. And this X rule is going to help us out in a few ways. But this is the first way we're going to apply it and learn about it, okay? Okay, so now let's try to apply this to a horizon line and in 1 point perspective, okay? So here's a horizon line. There's a little simple vanishing point there. Now let's go ahead and add a circle in perspective to it. So the thing about it is that we also can fit that circle within a square even when it's in perspective. And this is where it's going to help us. Here we've got the problem that we don't know the distance between this point of the square and this point, and just by looking at it, it's hard to tell where the midpoint is. And here we can see where the circle touches a square, but it's kind of hard to measure this now when we are looking at it in perspective. Now we can measure this line, the front and the back right here, because we've got even spacing here, right, in 1 point perspective. This distance here on this square is half, the whole thing, and we can get that. But the top and the bottom, that's a whole other story because it's receding in space. We can't just simply take a ruler to it and measure it, because as things get further away from us, they converge towards a vanishing point and get smaller. So this space, if it's in the middle, needs to be smaller than this space up here, or it won't look right. It won't look like it's in perspective. It won't look like the way we see things in reality. So here's the thing, right? We can still use an X to get those midpoints, even in perspective. So our X will still give us the middle without having to use any kind of ruler to measure the top and the bottom. We can make an X from one corner and then to the other corner, and then vice versa again, and that'll give us the exact midpoint, and then we can get this line right there. Right now, we can measure this top and bottom and right here like that, but this is the harder part to measure in perspective. Okay, now let's see how this would work out real quickly when we were drawing to get a circle in perspective. Okay, so once again, we would kind of start with a square and draw some lines for the square. Okay, there it is. Then we can do an X from one corner to the other corner. Then we can line up our ruler with that midpoint. We can measure it, but I just use the rulers or the X because it's already there. Then we can get the top and the bottom with another line because now we have the midpoint. And then we can kind of rough out our circle from drawing it within the square, and we'll know exactly where it's supposed to touch, okay? And that's applying our X rule to drawing a circle in perspective. Okay, hopefully this little visual will help. Let's try and do it on paper and see what we can do. So let's try and put that knowledge to use here and make some circles and then some cylinders. Okay, so I'm just going to give myself a horizon line once again. And a vanishing point. Oh, let's see. I'll just put it somewhere in the middle for this, so I have space on both sides. Okay, so as we learned, let's go ahead and just draw a regular old square. Let's just do that. We'll just do it down here. just to put it into practice, kind of. And this is just gonna be a circle. Actually, is it? No, let's do it over here. My bad. Just thought of something. Okay, let's do it over here. And we will take it to the vanishing point. Okay, so I'm gonna draw a square. So now it's got to be a square because this circle is going to be facing us, like not coming towards us, but facing right towards us. So I need to measure the distance that I'm creating here. So let's go ahead and make this line. Okay, now I've got to measure that and then do that same distance down that way. Let's see what I did. 1 is easier for me to go from. Oh, so I did just about 1 3/4 inches. You can be a little more precise if you want to and use a preset distance, but I just kind of did it arbitrarily here. 1 3/4 inches. There we are. And I'll do it again on this side just to make sure. Okay, now going straight across. Okay, we've got a circle. I'm sorry. I do know my shapes. I am an art teacher. We've got a square. Okay, now obviously to put a circle in here, I can measure this and I can come up with the half if I do half of 1 3/4, but too much, right? And a lot easier to do this. I'm going to do my X to find the middle, and that's going to give me my midpoints. So I'm going to just take a diagonal. Now I could do a diagonal the whole way across, but that just gives me more to erase. So I'm just going to do like a little diagonal where I know the middle is somewhere there. So I know it's there. Okay, so now that I've got my midpoint using my X rule, okay, I can go ahead and now use my little 90-degree angle here to make a mark there. And again, I don't have to draw the line all the way because again, it's more to ignore or erase, when I'm all done. So I'm just going to keep it nice and kind of light and just kind of put a little mark there. So the light, if you could make it really light, it's even better. So again, now I'm just kind of making the marks on the sides over here. Okay, and now I have the spots where my circle would touch. And now I know you could trace something. I know you could get, you can make a circle all sorts of different ways here and get it perfect. But that's not what I'm after here. I want us to kind of practice sketching it. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of sketch out my circle. All right, so I'm starting very lightly. Try to make these spaces look even. And if I wanted to make it perfect, we could get, something and trace around it. Or if we had a compass, we could use that, but that's generally not how it's done. Usually we're going to sketch, or we're going to use something in the computer to make it perfect. Especially with our sketching stage, we wouldn't bother doing that. We just want to kind of sketch it in there. Okay, so I went lightly and kind of like building up my line here. That's kind of how I think about it. I'm doing lots of little lines to build up that line. Okay, and I've got a pretty good circle there, okay? So let's go ahead and make this a cylinder. So now there's a couple things we can do here. Let's do it the long way first. We'll do it the hard way. Let's go ahead and draw the whole see-through box and do our cylinder that way. So I'm going to take each corner here. I'm going to take it to the vanishing point. And I do kind of want to go... I want to keep it a little bit far away because for this, I do not want it to overlap my back surface facing away from us. I don't want it to interfere with this one just for confusion while I'm trying to teach that. Now, obviously, if we were drawing something that's thinner, we would, we'd do what we have to do. but since we have a choice here, let's keep the back kind of farther away. So I'm just going to make sure the back box here, I'm going to make another box, okay? And I want to make sure it's just this edge here is not interfering with this line or overlapping at all. Again, just for clarity's sake. If that would happen in a drawing, then that would happen. So I just made my back edge there on this corner that I normally wouldn't see if it wasn't see-through. But I wanted to make sure it's away. Okay, now from there, that determined all the rest of my lines here. I don't even know how I got that line there. Let's get rid of that thing. Okay, so from here I got to go straight across. So let's go ahead and line this up here. Okay, now this side note here, side note. Oh, am I off there? Let me see. No, I'm pretty good, pretty good. So this is the long way to do this. And every time I draw a cylinder, you know, if I'm doing a background, I don't necessarily go through all these steps every time. Only when I need to. Only when I need to. Or if something is maybe very large and like, you know, and I have to make sure, or a big part of the picture, and I need to make sure it's, you know, proportioned properly or whatever, we could do that. But if I'm going to make a cylinder, I usually will just need to rough it out. But I think it's very important to learn how to draw it like as perfectly as possible, I guess, rather than to just rough it out every time. I feel like if you don't learn the hard way or the proper way, your freehand way, you know, kind of won't be as good. So, okay, so I did an X in the back as well. So I'm doing the same exact thing I did up front. Just in the back here. Okay, making my marks. A little targeting marks down on the top and the bottom. Okay, so I've got my points at which the circle would touch this square back here. And I'm going to go ahead and rough out my circle again. Now, I'm not going to make this cylinder see-through. So I don't really need to draw the whole thing. You know, maybe I'll lightly draw it just to have an idea, I guess, but like that. But I'm going to keep it pretty light. Okay, now, the tough thing is, now that I've got all these lines here, most of these lines need to just go away. Let me get a better eraser here. And this is why it's really good to draw in a light blue pencil or a different color when you're doing perspective, or you got to keep your lines really light because structure, you know, can kind of get in the way you're drawing. Okay, I'm going to actually kind of knock it all back a little bit. And I'm going to still be able to see it, and, you know, that's fine. So the one thing I haven't drawn is the edge connecting these two circles together. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to line this up with my vanishing point, and I'm going to move my ruler up until it kind of touches them both, until it looks right. Now, it may not be perfect because, again, we're drawing for like concept art kind of thing, rather than like doing an architectural perfect kind of rendering of something. So they may be slightly off, but if it's close enough, if it's on, you know, we can usually get away with it. So let me just go ahead and darken those lines now. I think I need to raise it just a little bit. Okay. Then I'm going to go ahead and go around here. Okay, let me come out here for this straight edge here. Okay. rest is just kind of roughing out this circle here. And this is the, my hand likes doing that kind of curve. So I'll turn the paper all the way around so I can keep my hand in its most comfortable position. Even if these pegs get in the way. So these pegs down here, I don't know if you can see them or not. These pegs are for animation. They're like this is an old school animation kind of little drawing surface. And this is how you put multiple drawings and they line up by putting them on the pegs. We can draw the same, character on top of each other, and you can get the paper and like right on top of the other paper. It's a register. There we go. Let's do another one. So this one's going to be a little tougher because we're going to be drawing the circles. We're going to draw the circles going in perspective. So there'll be ellipses, okay? So let's first go ahead and draw our box. Now the other tough thing about this, I'm going to keep it kind of big. And I do want to drop it below the horizon line. So I may have to draw it a little smaller here. Okay, the other tough thing about this is so I'm going to make it pretty big because you're going to find that once you draw the cylinder, it gets a lot thinner. Okay, let's go ahead and draw. So the circles are in squares, and look, I can measure this distance here, but that does not help me at all when I am trying to draw the distance going back. So unfortunately, again, come from an animation concept art kind of background. I don't know, nor have I ever really needed to get it perfect to make a perfect square. So I'm not even sure if there's a way. There probably is some formula somehow. I don't know, but it's just out of my realm of needing to know that. And you kind of have to just eyeball it, I guess. So I'm going to connect these corners here. And what usually ends up happening, this just comes from practice, is it's a lot thinner than you think it's going to be, a square, when it's going back in perspective. It really kind of thins out. Oh, let me get this last corner here. Why did I not connect that all the way? I'm not sure. Let's go ahead and finish that off. There we go. Okay, so, and I never start with the top one because the top one is inevitably going to be thinner as it's closer to the vanishing point. So we're going to have a better judge of our square with a lower one. And again, I'm not going to know exactly how perfect it is, but I have to just take a guess at what a square would be in perspective and just judge what I think might look right. And every time I've started with the top one, well, I don't know about every time, but it feels like every time it comes out way distorted. By the time I get to the bottom, I can tell clearly that it's an oval. But this might look close enough here like a square. I'm sure obviously it's not going to be perfect because it was just kind of guessed at. But it should look enough like one for my purposes, which again is more how it looks rather than how accurate it is. Okay, so finishing off my see-through box here. This time I'm doing the whole see-through box first. As you can already tell you things you already know. Okay, now check out how thin this got once we got to the top. Really, really thin. So we'll see what we can do there. Okay, all right, there we go. There's my box I'm starting with here. Now I'm going to go ahead and use my X. Now, once again, I could measure this distance here. That would give me the middle and the front and back, but it's not going to give me the middle and the sides. So I have to just use the X anyways. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it now. I got my ruler in this direction, so let's go ahead and just do this top one as well. And then let's go ahead and do this one here. Okay, okay. This one here. Okay, cool. So now I'm gonna go ahead and line these up with a vanishing point, this X. And then I'm gonna go and make a little nick over in the sides there, in the top and the bottom. Let's do the same thing with up here. So this one's actually gonna be the harder one to draw because it's such an angle, but it should still look good. Okay, then I have to do the sides here. So I'm gonna line up my little triangle here with the edge of the paper, I guess. Okay, good, good. Now let's do this one up here. Okay, so really thin up there, really thin. Okay, so before I go forward here, I am once again going to knock back a bunch of this. As long as I can kind of see what's going on there still. Which once again will not be a problem because I did use a darker blue pencil instead of like a non-photo blue pencil. Okay, so let me get a sharp pencil here. And I'm going to rough out my circle. So I'm knowing my circle touches there now. I know it's really thin here. I know it's going to touch right here. Right there. And something like that. Okay, and the bottom, go ahead and rough that out. I'm roughing out the back, even though this will not be a see-through cylinder, but just so I make sure I get the shape feeling correct. All right, let me turn this all the way around. Okay. There we go. Okay, now I can erase the back there. This could be like a soda can or something, or a trash can. And let's go ahead and make a straight line down, kind of right where these two would touch. Looks pretty much right on that same point. Okay, over here, straight down. I could line up my ruler properly. There we go, there we go. Okay, now I just need to darken it up. Okay, so let's, since I have my ruler here, I'm gonna do my straight lines first here. Okay, let's go ahead and sketch this in. Really thin ellipse up here. And the ellipse is, when we're looking at a circle, at an angle like this, it's an ellipse, in case you didn't know. Okay, now the bottom. All right, there we go. We've got two cylinders in perspective. I'm gonna add some quick value on it. So I'm gonna keep my same light source right up here, coming down towards this from the front. My kind of typical light source, just my little typical light source symbol, which means if it's coming, the light's hitting here, the highlight, and it's gonna get darker as it gets to the back here. Of our core shadow over here. And leave a little bit of a edge there just for some reflected light. And then I'm going to kind of bring it up towards the front. Okay, just some quick shading here. And then a little bit on the side here. Ooh, little fumble on the pencil. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to keep my top. The lightest I can make it, which is just the paper, of course. Okay, in the bottom here, now this is going to be a little different because we actually have this bottom part, which would get a lot more of a shadow, or core shadow would be deeper because it's really facing away from our light source up there. Okay, so I'm going to make it darker. And again, I'm going to get a little bit lighter towards the bottom so I have some reflected light. And then I'm going to make my values lighter and lighter and lighter until I get to the top there. Usually add a little bit of something on the back edge. It's kind of weird, but once it starts, so we're looking at more surface area right here. And then as we go around any kind of rounded object, we're looking at we're looking at condensed surface area. So, you know, when you turn something on its edge, you see more surface area, but it's in a smaller space. So it tends to make things darker as kind of like all the details from that surface area kind of condense into a smaller area. So I don't know if that didn't make any sense, don't worry about it. But we see the surface area more spread out here. And as we go around, the surface area gets more condensed. We're seeing a lot of surface, but in a less amount of space, and it usually gets darker. Again, if you don't understand that, don't worry about it. Just trust me. All right, well, there are 2 cylinders in 1-point perspective. Hopefully it worked out for you guys, and we'll keep practicing perspective in the next video. And thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time.